I'm Mike,
And I'm Amber. Welcome to the Covenant Chronicles,
where we tell you the truth about relationships.
giving you the tools to build the foundation you always needed. Welcome back to the Covenant Chronicles.
Sup? Why, hello.
Are you just trying out different greetings?
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
That's how you have to do it.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Is that how you feel tonight?
Yeah, fixing my toupee hair according to your mother.
That was funny.
Yeah.
It would be really funny if we just like recorded these video wise the
While
way
I'm
that we
doing this.
normal do that.
Yeah, it'd be way funnier if it wasn't just me looking in a mirror, like fixing my hair right now.
Yeah, just sitting here in PJs and stuff.
I'm half naked.
It'd be a crazy video.
I'm still trying to figure out, giving you a hand necklace earlier. You said something about like, don't do that with my muscles and stuff. I don't even know what that was about. But...
I could feel your muscle.
Oh, gotcha. So you liked it, is what you're saying.
I said, don't do that with your muscles.
So don't give you a hand necklace while flexing my muscles. Got it. Anyway, that's not at all what we're talking about.
No, sure not.
Nope. We want to talk about, not we want to, we're going to talk about assumptions.
Yes.
And I actually really like this one, right? Because we have a fantastic example of it recently
from this week.
Yeah, but I mean, I mainly want to talk about yesterday. And the reason why is because this is, I know I say it a lot as far as like, oh, this is a huge deal inside of relationships. And there are quite a few different things, right? And it's all relative to communication. When you break it down, right?
Yeah.
The core of it is relative to communication. However, this is one that we see quite often inside of relationships. And this is the topic of assumptions. And I want to paint a picture of just how easy it is to let assumptions basically unfold and throw you down this path that you don't want to be in, right?
Yeah.
So I want to recap basically Friday night into Saturday, right?
Yeah.
So we go into Friday. On our calendar for Saturday morning is, two of the kids had a hockey game and you were going to take the kids to go do that. I had a meeting that was previously rescheduled having to do with some basically tax planning stuff. And we kind of had things laid out. Well, then at some point there was this kind of suggestion of, well, maybe I'll just come to the game and I can leave early. We'll just take 2 cars. I'll leave early, go to the tax thing, and we'll do that. And there were some things said, we had stopped by a friend of ours' house Friday night on the way home. And I had mentioned some stuff about maybe I should do this at the game tomorrow, this, that, and the other. And then on the way home, I had kind of said, well, really, by the time things get started, this and that, I'm only going to be 30 minutes into it. And then I got to start heading back out. Don't really want to waste the gas to do that. And and this, that, and the other. So then Saturday morning rolls around and alarm goes off, you get up, and it's like, hey, we got to get up. And I'm like, what? Why do we have to get up? And you're like, well, like, duh, like the hockey game. And I was like, did you not recall like what we talked about, kind of thing? I mean, I'm half asleep, so I sure I said it kind of in a dick way. And
Kinda.
and so you go, oh, well, that wasn't what I thought was happening, but okay, and you go on getting ready, you leave, this, that, and the other. Then I get a text that this tax planning situation is canceled and rescheduled to who knows when. And then we have this situation where I don't say anything to you about that, but I'm now waiting for you to come home.
Mhm.
And, the hockey game, you should have been probably home by, we'll say 10:30, right?
Yeah.
But between all the stuff, you do have to get there an hour early and this and that, and you got up early. So, by the time all that occurred, you get the kids there, they play this, that, and the other. They undress, come home, whatever, um, or change and come home, and all that should be about 10:30. So 11:30 rolls around, and I'm like sitting here, and I'm kind of this point, like, well, what's going on? Right? Like, should be home by now. So I'm like, you gonna be home soon? I think it's 11:30, maybe 11:45. And, you're busy, you're doing your thing. So it takes a few minutes. And then you message back, you're like, oh, well, I just got done at the store and this and that. And well, let me back up to this. The previous night, we had talked about after the game, going to the store, getting some groceries that we needed, that sort of thing. So you text me, hey, just getting done going to the store. And I'm going back to get one of the other kids who then had refed because he also refs hockey, right? And so, well, now you're going back to get that. And now I'm annoyed because I'm like, well, I could have done all this stuff this morning had I known. And then you and I have a little bit of back and forth on that. I wouldn't say we're necessarily arguing, but it did basically trigger some stuff, right? Like with some feelings that you were having, like it made you feel like you did something wrong. And I was a little bit annoyed at this point because like I feel like I'd wasted a bunch of time and this, that, and the other. Anyways, you come home. Um, our initial interaction isn't great. Get the groceries offloaded. We're getting ready to go so I can go handle some stuff. And I kind of just paused and I said, you know what? Time out. I haven't ate today. It's, at this point, it's almost 1 o'clock. And I'm like, I haven't ate today. I'm probably grumpy because, it's our chill day. I haven't ate, feel like I haven't done anything. And, we were getting ready to take your car. And I said, well, it doesn't make sense to take your car anyways because you need to put fuel in the other vehicles. So let's let's time out. Come inside. Let's reset. Let's go. Oh, I think I said, hey, at this point, I don't think I had come to you de-escalating. I think it still seemed a little more abrupt. That was my intention, but the challenge was I'd also just shoveled out the bed of my truck. We just got a snowfall. I'm doing this and that. I'm trying to do all these things, and like I'd done a bunch of stuff trying to get it done quickly to get it handled. So now I'm kind of half out of breath, and I'm like, hey, like let's go do this, let's do that, da da da. And like it was very probably abrupt is the way it came across of timeout, stop, let's go inside, let's make lunch, whatever, this, that, and the other. And so you come inside, and at this point we take our stuff off. You go to our master bath, and I'm just talking to you, and I'm nice. I'm like, hey, da, 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 da. And I realize you're really upset. And so I come in the bathroom, say, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? And you tell me, I'm emotionally overloaded right now. This, that, and the other. I don't want today to be bad. I feel like we're heading that direction, blah, 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 blah. And you basically tell me how you're feeling. And so I take a second and we end up, sitting there and I sat on the edge of our tub and I said, okay, let's take a pause here, because I think things are not that they're bigger than they need to be, but they're more complex than they need to be. And I said, look, a lot of this stems from both of us making assumptions about things. It is what it is. We made some assumptions. It led to some miscommunication, but that's okay. That doesn't have to be the rest of the day. Let's just keep moving forward. Both had some miscommunication, both had some assumptions on both sides. And at the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal. It was something that occurred, but it's not that big of a deal. It's not what our day is. It's not how our day is going to go. It was just a small portion of something that's occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And you agreed and you said, I know, I'm trying to get these emotions out because I feel like I need to get them out and I need to let go of them. So this is me doing that. Okay. And had some time. And then we, actually we ended up, I think, going and making food, hugged you, held you for a minute, let you come down. I went out, started making food. You came out a few minutes later making food. And at some point in the day, we had some intimate time and reconnected and that sort of stuff. But I bring this up because, and this is, possibly long-winded now, probably 10 minutes explaining a story. And hopefully we haven't lost you yet, right? But or lost them yet. But how many times have you seen in a relationship, right? Because let's go back and break this down with assumptions, right? I had mentioned initially I'm going to go to the hockey game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, okay, he's going, because I had said that. Then I said, hey, you know what? It really doesn't actually make sense, this, that, and the other. But I never said I'm not going. I said, it doesn't really make sense because this, that, and the other, and the timing and the, extra gas and da 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 da. But I never said I wasn't going, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm assuming that I've now communicated, hey, I'm not going, right? So then the next morning, you're still under that impression. That happens. Well, now you're under the assumption, okay, well, he's not going, but I'm going to continue the rest of the morning as if he, had come to the game, because it really didn't matter, because after the game, he wouldn't have been here anyway, so I'm going to continue that. I'm under the assumption that, well, now that the morning has shifted around, we'll have some sort of communication about the morning shifting, and potentially that'll change the plans, right? So then I'm waiting for you to come home or to communicate something. You're doing this,
Well, you also hadn't communicated that the meeting got shifted, so I
right,
assumed you were still at the meeting.
right. And so there was these assumptions that were made, right? And when I was bringing this down and we were working together to bring this situation back to level and to get us back in a good space to where we can be playful and fun and all that stuff, right? That was part of the, like, hey, we made these assumptions, but it's okay. We just need to talk a little bit more. We need to communicate a little bit more. We didn't do that in the last 12 or 18 hours or whatever it was, right? Okay, we'll take care of it. We'll keep moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we were able to completely shift this around. But I think this is really important because how often do you see this in relationships, right? And it's never taken as, hey, we both made some assumptions. It gives us evidence that we just haven't been communicating as well as we could have
Mm-hmm.
in the last 12 hours or 18 hours or whatever it was. It's okay. It's not the way today is going to go, right? And declaring that, right? Because back to the, it's a mindset thing, right? We bring that up a lot. And declaring this is the direction that our day is going to go, not this,
Yeah.
right? But how many times inside of relationships do you see these things where people really just take that, and it becomes this thing where now both parties are trapped in this. I have to prove my point, and I have to be right because my point is more valid than yours.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how many times does this lead to such conflict that can potentially drag out hours or even days over some simple things, right?
Yeah.
Because and even like as good as we are at communicating, we miss the mark here, and it puts you in an emotional state that you didn't want to be in. You flat out said, "This is not the emotional state I want to be in," right?
Yeah.
And once again, though, instead of us continuing it, instead of us trying to prove our point, I had to take the reins and say, okay, you know what? We both made some assumptions. It's okay. It's not the way today's going to go. I hear you. I understand. Let me just hold you and be in this space with you and be there for you. And let's keep the day pushing forward and not repeat these same actions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But that is such a critical thing that I think so many couples miss. And they get so trapped in this I'm right, you're wrong mindset,
Yeah.
and the you versus me instead of the we and us, right? That they can't even get out of this cycle, and they do this cycle over and over and over and over again. And you end up in conflict where, I mean, I I'm sure you can relate, but I know for me personally, I've witnessed it with other couples go on for years, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
something this simple as an assumption, and then these assumptions are made, and then if somebody gets upset or annoyed because they made an assumption, and then their assumption wasn't right,
Yeah.
and then the other person gets defensive and puts up a wall, and then we're batting this tennis ball back and forth over the you know over
Yeah.
the wall of like, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of relationships are built on assumptions, though, and it's easy to get trapped in. I mean, the other one I was thinking about was earlier in the week. Like, we also had kind of an issue where, like, you had mentioned that you were wanting to do something, and my assumptions came into play from things that have previously happened in the past,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I already was like getting annoyed before we talked it through because my assumption was that you were going to do what you've previously done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I carried that through the conversation like, well, I know you're going to do it. So,
First
like
Corinthians keeps no account of wrongs, right?
yeah, then you threw that out, and I was like, listen, I'm not bringing up everything that has happened in the past. I'm just telling you that based on past events,
Right.
this is what I'm feeling.
Well,
But
but let's talk about that scenario, right?
yeah,
Because let's talk about how it was handled and how we work through it versus how those scenarios typically go in relationships, right?
yeah,
Because in that, instead of me, there was a split second where we had, because we were texting during that time, right?
yeah,
Which is harder to communicate sometimes because you miss some of the context. But there was a couple texts back and forth. And then I paused and I said, you would, what was it? I think I said flat out, hey, I think there's some assumptions being made right now. This is not what's occurring.
yeah,
This was just brought to my attention, late, because it was like late the night before something was brought to my attention. It wasn't critical. It was planning for something a couple weeks out. And it was like the next morning I was talking to you about it. And I was like, hey, this is being, and like you said, you did assume. And I flat out said, hey, I think there's assumptions being made right now. This is not what's occurring. and you'd said some stuff back, and I said, "Hey, love, First Corinthians, this is not the past, right?" And you were like, "Well, I'm not hitting you on everything. This is just typically the way things go, and blah blah blah." And I said, "Okay, I hear you, right? And I understand, but that's not what's occurring here." And I reiterated, "This is what happened. I'm bringing it to you now to discuss and talk about. I'm not telling you this is what's happening. I'm discussing it with you
Yeah.
of here's some possibilities. We probably need to come up with some solutions for this event, da 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 da, right?" And then you were able to step back and say, "Okay, I get it. Just so you know, it did trigger me a little bit because, in past situations, this is what's happened, and, this, that, and the other." And I said, "Okay, I understand. Well, let's talk through this," right? And we did, and we talked through it. But that is another example of how quickly that could have tailspinned into a much bigger argument that would have drug on the entire flipping day, right?
Well, I think that's maybe like where our communication might differ somewhat from, and it's stuff that we've had to work on. And like, I feel like if you've done any sort of like um, work on yourself, or even maybe gone to therapy or something, like, something that's often said is like, um, saying like, this is how I feel versus like trying to attack the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I usually, whenever I feel like we might be not understanding each other, I'll be like, listen, this is just how I feel and my perception.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to like attack you or whatever. And I, even in that conversation, was like, if I am assuming wrong, then I will like take full responsibility for that. And I think that's different than what usually happens because it's not like most people don't go into a conversation and they're like, well, I'll take responsibility if I'm wrong. Like,
Right.
it's just, no, you're wrong.
Well,
And
and that's where there's a couple things, right, that you said that was key here. And I also want to bring up something that I said and show people how a lot of the time, uh no, all the time, it is our mindset around something that dictates the reality of it, right? So what you said is, in these situations, when I'm feeling some type of way, instead of it being this you thing, it's a, hey, I feel this way, right?
yeah,
And that is a huge thing because there are many times where that has been my indicator of, okay, maybe I'm viewing something. Hold on. Before I get defensive, before I act this way, let me think about this. And I can think things through and respond in a way that brings us back to center, brings us back to level, and allows us to work together on a problem instead of it dividing us more, right? The other thing, when I said, hey, when you're texting, it can be challenging because sometimes the context isn't relayed, right?
yeah,
Which is 100% true. However, this mindset of you can't communicate through text that most people have, while it is true, it also can be a massive benefit if you reshape your mind that way when you are first learning how to communicate differently. And the reason I say this is because if you train yourself to create a rule of just, okay, I'm going to read this and then I'm going to set my phone down for 30 seconds
hmm,
or a minute, right? Whatever it is to bring your head back down. This can be a massive tool to actually taking a break and saying, okay, let me think this through. Am I actually justified in what I'm saying right now? Am I just being reactive with what I'm saying right now? Am I feeling defensive or attacked? And now I feel that I need to throw a brick back right now, and actually sort through some of these feelings before you respond to make the situation worse, right?
yeah,
But like you said, when you do that, these two things the one of when you're expressing something, just simply saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Not a you're making me feel, not you're doing this, not you do this, but a this is how I'm feeling right now. And sometimes, now here's the thing, especially if you've been in a situation before where you guys don't communicate well and there's a lot of like um, proverbial bricks thrown back and forth at each other, this may be a challenge at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to reiterate, hey, I'm not saying you are, but this is how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
right? Or I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying this is how I'm feeling right now,
Yeah, we have
right?
to say that sometimes to each other.
Right. But this is the thing, right? Is like people think that these techniques are only when you're having high conflict and they only work in certain circumstances and they're unique to certain couples and da 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 da. But the truth is, all of these techniques and the way we talk about things and the way we think through things, right? Even the thing, me shifting my mindset, okay, hey, can I be angry right now? Or can I be annoyed right now? And can I keep trying to make a point? Sure, I could,
Yeah.
but for what? Right? And then to actually go and say, no, I am going to take a breath here and think, what is the outcome I want? The outcome I want is to have a great day with my wife.
Yeah.
Right? And this is something that I think a lot of people miss too, because they get so caught up in being right that they think by them being right, it's going to lead to this situation where their partner just says, "Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm wrong. Let's just, I'm so sorry, blah blah blah. Let's move on with our day." Right? But
Yeah.
that's not what ends up happening. And when you look at it, right, in like the situation where I'll I'll say 2 days ago when we had these assumptions, or a day ago, and we had to reframe stuff. What was the outcome by me continuing to try and prove my point?
Yeah.
Well, one, I'm not 100% right. It's an emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Two, all it's going to lead to is more division and us dragging crap out and wasting an entire day arguing or being upset or being annoyed or all this, right? Versus stepping back and saying, well, we both had a part in this.
Yeah.
The solution is, well, we weren't as good as we could have been about communication. We assumed a lot instead of just simply asking, right? And we both came together and said, well, yeah, we both could have asked questions of each other during that time. And that would have solved, at any point in time, had one of us asked some questions, we could have resolved a lot of this. So, okay, we're going to work together when, moving forward, we're going to continue to make that commitment to continue to get better at this and continue to make sure that when these situations arise, we do
Yeah.
communicate, right? Because the reality is, a lot of times we do.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time we do, but we're not perfect and we don't do it 100% of the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that this is really powerful in the way that we can portray this, in the way that we can communicate these things and say, look, here's where we messed up. This is what happens in all relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a pivotal point in which you either keep doing it wrong or you change the outcome
Yeah.
and get a much better result.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to remember too, because like I can say Saturday, like our stuff that happened, like I got to a point of feeling emotionally overwhelmed because it's not this situation that I wanted to be in with me and you, but I
Mhm.
didn't really know how to communicate that or like stop the fact that I was still having emotions about the situation, but, like, it almost made me overstimulated and overwhelmed emotionally because I knew, like, I didn't wanna be in this situation.
Mhm.
I didn't wanna be frustrated with you. I didn't want you frustrated with me, and so it was, like, heightening my emotion almost, and I think that sometimes that's the situation that women get in. It's like, we know we don't want to be emotional right now, but we're feeling these emotions, and then sometimes, if the guy doesn't pick up on that, then it's really easy to heighten our emotions even more,
Mm.
and then it gets then it does just become this thing that gets extended for periods of time because, like, you're upping the emotional, like, overwhelm that we already feel when we're really just wanting to, like, let go of the emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, ask yourself, what is my outcome right now?
Yeah.
Am I trying to be right, or am I trying to get my relationship to a better point than it currently is at this moment, right?
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about the overall like state of your relationship. We're just talking about in this moment versus a few moments down the road, right?
Mhm.
And if your goal is to, hey, I want reconnection, right? Stop trying to be right. Because at the end of the day, you trying to be right is more than likely going to create division.
Does it even really matter? Like, we all feel like it matters whenever we're in the heat of the moment, but at the end of the day, does it really matter if you're right in the situation?
No, and the reality about it is in most of these marital situations, it's not this like, well, they're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong, right?
Yeah.
I talked about this the other day. I was actually bringing it up in a completely different context, and it is true of relationships in general, where you're talking about an intimate relationship, a friendship, a working relationship, whatever it is, right? You run into this communication barrier so often where people are set on, I have to be right, as
Mhm.
opposed to both realities can potentially be right,
Yeah.
right? Because in this situation, let's, I mean, talk about our situation. Was I right in assuming that, well, because one of the major morning events changed, that we should communicate about the rest of the events that were supposed to occur that morning to make sure nothing else is disrupted or should change? Yes. Were you right in assuming that you weren't going to continue with the plan because I still had other things to basically take care of that morning, that you were under the assumption that I was taking care of because
Mhm.
that was the last communication we have? Yes. Right? So both of us in that scenario are right.
Yeah.
What made it wrong was neither of us communicating.
Yeah.
And so we were both right and we were both wrong. But how many times do you see in a relationship in which, no, I'm going to prove my point because X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
right? And you see it all the time inside of relationships where it is a situation of both truths can be right.
Yeah.
Now, whether the chicken comes before the egg or the egg comes before the chicken, right? That is an age old debate that I think depends on the scenario.
Mhm.
However, both truths are right.
Yeah.
And it's the same inside of relationships.
Well, and sometimes the breakdown in our communication is that, like, we'll just continue to text each other and forget, like, we can actually call each other to
Hmm.
solve issues, and we're really bad about that for some reason. I I don't know why other than, like, I tend to assume that you're gonna be busy and I don't wanna bother you, or, like, "Oh, I'm gonna call and he's not gonna answer, so I'll just text him." Like,
Mhm.
built-in assumptions that I have in my head that prevent me from, like, doing that when we should just be, calling and communicating with each other.
Right.
So, it's down that same line, like, maybe you need to evaluate the built-in assumptions that you have in your relationship in the first place, which is, like, to my point about, like, the thing that happened earlier in the week, is that we do like, I was good about communicating to you that I feel this based on something that has happened in the past. Not that I'm blaming you, just something happened in the past. This is why I feel that way. But we also have to take ownership of, like, we've created these assumptions,
Uh-huh.
you know, because all of us do. We all create so many assumptions in our heads that we don't even realize are assumptions until we start, like,
Yeah.
talking about them or thinking about them, or they come up in, you know, a disagreement or an argument, and then it's like, "Oh, well, that is an assumption that I made," and it's created an issue that I didn't realize, was
I mean, there's a ton, right? And like the reality is when it comes back to mindset, these assumptions that we make also program our mindset, which when we're thinking about this all the time, whatever we set our mind to is what our reality is going to be,
Mhm.
right? So then we start creating problems that really weren't there based on our assumptions.
Yeah. Well, and let's just be honest, women are really good at making assumptions and, like, creating whole fake scenarios with assumptions, and I think that tends to get us into trouble because
I think men and women both do it, to be honest with you, because I mean, look at the classic, oh, my when I come home, my wife is gonna nag me, you know,
yeah,
assumption.
it's true.
Well, half the time, like it's probably because you come home with a bad attitude because you're assuming something that's gonna happen that hasn't happened, right?
Right.
And then she assumes that he's gonna come home and just do absolutely nothing every single time. So then he comes
Yeah.
home in a bad attitude, right? And then both of them are assuming this because potentially it has happened before, right?
Yeah.
But they're both assuming instead of communicating and saying, hey, um, yeah, I just sometimes I really just don't feel like I want to come home because like I feel like I'm just going to come home and get nagged and I've dealt with all this crap all day and this is like my safe haven. And, and then I end up just kind of hibernating and checking out on the couch, and then she goes, well, I don't want to nag you. I've dealt with the kids all day or I've dealt with this all day. And then, you come home and I just assume you're just going to sit on the couch and do nothing when there's this to do and that to do and da 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 da. Right.
Mhm.
And then it becomes this thing where, oh, okay, well, hey, maybe we can work together on this. You have dealt with stuff all day and, this, that, and the other. And you both realize, well, she needs a break from the kids all day and you need time to shift gears when you come home. So maybe you come home, you greet the kids, and then you guys go take 20 minutes to yourselves and lock the door in the bedroom and just sit there and talk for 20 minutes,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be, right? You can find a ton of different ways to resolve this issue, but there's so many problems, like you said, that are just built up based on assumptions inside of relationships. And then we get stuck in this hamster wheel where we have to be right instead of just, well, am I actually right? Are we both right? Are we both wrong?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, my brain's going down a whole rabbit hole of, like, dang. I think so many relationships are just built off a million assumptions about the other person
Uh-huh.
that, like, they get into such a bad spot based on assumptions that are not even necessarily true about that person,
Yep.
you know? Like, you're talking about the coming home and greeting each other in the house, like, that's 100% what happens, you know?
Mhm.
Like, and then, it becomes this thing where the guy's like, "Well, I just want you to not nag me and to have more sex with me." And she's like, "Well, I don't wanna have sex with you because all you wanna do is, like, if you touch me, you think that that now we have to have sex." But, like, all of those are actually assumptions that are being made and not actually what's happening, you know?
Don't get me started, because you gonna make me bring out that, like, if he was doing his stuff, she would want to have sex with you every time you touched her.
I mean, that's true, but still, like, at the end of the day, really, like, that's a huge thing that happens in a lot of relationships is women are like, "Oh, he just expects sex every time he touches me." But does he really? Like, I'm sure that not every single time he touches you, his first expectation is that you're gonna now have sex. But
Uh-huh.
you've built this assumption up that that's the case because, maybe one time he did want sex during that touch or he did,
Oh, what's funny, even funnier, is you go into that same scenario about the guy, and there's this chicken egg scenario of you don't really know what came first, right?
Yeah.
But speaking of the hamster wheel and just continuing to run on it, the guy will do that, assuming if he were to try, she's going to shut him down,
Mhm.
right? And one or two things occurs. Basically, he either goes into well, I might as well try because she's going to shut me down anyways, or I might as well not even try because she's going to shut me down anyways, right?
Yeah.
Either of which ends up becoming the situation where that's where his mind goes, which then puts off that energy, which then leads to when he touches her, she feels that energy, which then leads to don't touch me because all you want is this,
Yeah.
right? And then it just becomes a cycle,
Yeah.
all based
All
off of
based off of
assumptions.
assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's almost a never ending. I feel like we could pick almost anything
Yep.
that's an issue inside of relationships and uh, probably could narrow it down to an assumption that's been made about the other person
Yes.
that may or may not be true. Like, okay, maybe it did happen one time, but does the one time equal all times?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. On
So
that
there's
note,
that.
on that note, I think this week your task is to write down 3 assumptions that you have
Mhm.
about your partner. And then you're going to take these 3 assumptions and you're going to create a time and space to have a discussion. And this discussion is going to be, hey, I really want to talk to you because I'm trying to progress our relationship forward. And I really want to talk about assumptions because, one, I would like to know if these assumptions are true or not,
Mhm.
or if it's just something I've created in my head. And two, if they are true, I would like to get to the root cause of them because potentially I'm way off base here.
Mhm.
And I think it would be a really powerful thing in our relationship to overcome some of this.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then the key is when you have this discussion to shut up and not let your emotions take over and create more of an issue.
And try to use the "I feel" statement and not
Uh-huh.
"you did this and you make me feel."
Uh-huh. Yep. Exactly. Just like that.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
there you have it. And until next time,
Bye, guys.
bye.